Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your T-shirted historian, and welcome to another edition of Dungeons and Discussions with Grim Jim this time.
Yes, hello. Sorry.
You're all right. Okay. Before I get started, before I get underway, a couple things. I know some of you guys are anxiously awaiting our talk with the designers of Zombicide Plague Bearer. Well, unfortunately, I got the news a couple of days ago that they have decided to push back the release of Plague Bearer. I'm not sure what their reasoning was exactly. Might actually still be able to find the email if I look. Forgive me, I'm running a little slow this morning. Got plenty of sleep. It's just had other things popping up.
One of those days.
It's definitely one of those days. It's about Dune. Well, I guess it doesn't matter right now. I mean, probably go over it on Tuesday with Geeks tonight, but yeah, suffice it to say, they have pushed back the release of Plague Bearer, the role-playing game. So likely that means the interview has probably been pushed back as well, because I know they're going to be making some changes to it. And I kind of can't help but wonder if our live play wasn't a little bit of a influence on that, you know? like maybe they watched and they said, oh, well, maybe we need to clarify some things, or we need to fix a few things before we go into production. I really don't know. I mean, that's just wishful thinking on my part. I would like to think that game designers watch live plays to see how their games are doing and make adjustments.
You're an influencer, Harry.
Wouldn't that be cool? Hey, nothing would make me happier than to rep CMON on their stuff. And, you know, I don't know. Maybe get some free product because Zombicide is expensive. And I don't see it. I don't see it going away anytime soon. And as a matter of fact, one thing I was going to announce tonight on Tuesday is that their Army of the Dead TTRPGs, well, their board game. I'm sorry, their Army of the Dead board game for Zombicide is supposed to be coming out quite soon. Actually, I think next month.
Bit late for that, isn't it?
Yeah. They bought the property way back when Army of the Dead first came out, and I guess the lack of success on the show and kind of maybe got them to push it back and push it back and push it back. And since they still had the license, and I guess they got far enough in it, they just said, "Yeah, let's just go ahead and do it anyway."
Yeah, not quite Rebel Moon level fuckery, but close.
Yeah.
Motion detected at the front door.
Sorry, that's mine.
Yep. Got a package?
Yes, but Mrs. Grimm should get it. So
okay.
Right.
Yeah. I will probably pick up Army of the Dead just because it is a Zombicide game and it does look kind of interesting from what I've heard of it. But anyway, that's in the tabletop realm. Well, it's part of the tabletop realm. And hey, good morning, Timothy M. Holt, and good morning, Crafty Matt. It's good to see you guys.
Hello, chaps.
All right, so I had kind of a different discussion in mind this week, but the 44 rules thing popped up across my feed yesterday, and Caster kind of shoved me towards it, and I consider it to be like a form of, whenever we ask the audience for, like suggestions and ideas for what to talk about, I took it as this is a suggestion from a fan, so we're going to do it.
Right.
Plus, Dungeon Craft already released a video about it, so whatever. It's Professor Dungeon Master. Good guy. I've tried to get him on the show, but he doesn't answer me, so Kind of typical, though. I reach out to people, they don't respond.
You can only try. And then
I know.
they do.
Sometimes they do, but I'm so getting used to rejection these days. Forgive me, I haven't had any caffeine this morning, so I'm busy chugging Rehab. My drink of choice. Yeah, there's a lot of bad takes on the 44 rules. Yeah, and I do want to preface it by saying, after having read them, I am going to say that it's really fairly obvious to me that this is a DM who is experienced and probably a little fed up with his regular group. This is the kind of thing that you would put out for a group of friends that you game with on a regular basis. This is not something like, you would just go to your friendly local game store, announce you're playing a D&D game, and then just slam 44 rules down in front of them and say, you know what, if you don't listen to these, then fuck you. This is pretty obviously a list that is born out of somebody's aggravation with the way his game group is developed or is going. And that's something to talk about in and of itself, because one thing you do notice as a DM and as a player is if you've had any gaming experience with a group for any length of time, whether it be like one session or 5 months or 5 years or whatever like that, there's things about people that will aggravate you and irritate you at a gaming table. And they may not be doing it intentionally. It may just be a subconscious thing. It may just be the way people are, but it happens. I mean, whether you're actually really friends outside the gaming table or not, when you're all sitting at the gaming table, you definitely have to at least, coexist for the time that you're there. And there are cases where people's behaviors at the table will grate on you. It's just inevitable. And yeah, I also agree. More often than not, the DM will be the a-hole before people recognize the players are really the a-hole. Yeah, that's also.
Yeah.
It's not a list to read with a German accent. Thank you, Ironcaster. I may actually try that.
It makes me think of the song by the Nails, 88 lines about 44 women. So I would try and set it to song, but I'm not terribly great at that.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to put this up on screen so we can both read them over and talk about them. And some of these, are so table specific that it's kind of like, well, I really don't think this needs to be mentioned. And you see that okay? Or do we need to bring it up a little bit?
Yeah, just about. I've got it up on a window anyway.
Okay. So number 1 is, I'm timing turns. I don't give a fuck if it's unfair in your opinion because your spells are hard or you don't know what square to move to. You get 1 minute to know all the actions you want to take, or I skip your turn. Okay. That one's fair comment, actually, I would say, because you only have so many minutes to play or so many hours to play, and being mindful of your turn is really etiquette as much as anything else. It's like, when it's your turn, be ready, know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, but I think it's good to be mindful and to prepare your turn while other people are taking their turns and all of that stuff. But a hard limit of a minute, it's okay, yeah, you want people to take their turns in a timely fashion. But a minute, spells are more complicated than I hit it with my axe. It can take longer to do and to adjudicate and to juggle your spell list and everything else. So in a game where there's lots of players and it takes a while to get round to your turn, that might be fine. Smaller groups might not be. And then there's the fact that your character might be a tactical genius but you might not be. So it might take you a while and a couple of fumbles to figure out exactly what you do want to do that would fit your character. So yeah,
there is that, and there something that's kind of specific, I think, to this game that isn't necessarily specific to a lot of games I run or you run even. It's pretty obvious that these guys use a map board of some kind, probably with miniatures or tokens of some kind. So tactical movement becomes kind of important, and what you do on a given turn can change tactically very quickly depending on what the enemy does or what's just happened as a result of someone else's turn.
Yeah, I think he says stuff later on about, once you've moved, that's it, sort of thing, which is going to make you hesitate more, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily sure I would put a hard limit on the time it takes for someone to move or anything like that, but definitely I would say, yeah, be timely with your turns.
Yeah. In combat, you want to keep the pace going. You want to keep that sense of excitement and snap decisions and things. So yeah. I sympathize. I just think a hard limit is a bit shitty.
Yeah. So maybe a little harsh. Number 2. If you want harder fights, bring a second character sheet and expect to twiddle your thumbs when you die. I'm not going to baby anyone. I don't know about that one. Harder fights, it's kind of a case of, well, I mean, I have this difficulty myself because I either tend to misjudge a party's strength and I either overcompensate with the enemies and it ends up being a near TPK or a TPK, or I grossly underestimate what the party's capabilities are and they blow through an encounter. I'm like, okay, I've got the boss thing. He's got like 12 hit dice and he's a badass and all. And so the opponents are like, okay, I sick 15 cyber dogs on him and he dies. Oh, okay. Well, okay, that was
depending on the game, though, it can be really hard to judge the difficulty of an encounter. But like in 3rd edition D&D, challenge rating kind of worked. Kinda. 5th edition, it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
It's no predictor whatsoever.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult to gauge what a party can and can't do in combat because magic items will throw things off, new rules from new character classes or new feats and abilities, especially from third-party sources that haven't been vetted and tested, can throw things off. I remember specifically we were playing a 3.5 game, and I was playing a kobold sorcerer, and I found a spell that was from a published Wizards of the Coast book. I think it was like Power Word Pain. And nobody else had seen it yet. I was the only one with a copy of that book, but it was an official Wizards of the Coast publication. It wasn't like, a third party, like, oh, we just wrote this crap book. And the first time I used Power Word Pain, everybody in the room just got so mad. They were like, that spell is so broken. I'm like, it's in the book. It's an official Wizards of the Coast book product. It's a first level spell. That's too powerful for a first level spell. And secretly, and I'll be perfectly honest about this, I knew it was a broken spell. I knew it was. But the reason I used it is because we had another player at our table who constantly was using third-party sources that were just absolutely broken beyond belief, and the DM would just continue to let that stuff through without letting it get checked, right? So that was kind of my attempt to point out, it's like, well, if you're letting, what's his face get away with this crap, and he's all coming out of unofficial sources. Here I am using an official spell, and you're complaining about it. Yeah, Yeah, crafty mat. Yeah, kind of like the silvery barbs thing. So, but
Yeah,
getting
challenge
back
brings
to
consequence. So
what's that?
it's a challenge brings consequence.
It does.
So yeah, if you want it, you're going to have to accept the other side of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is something that my GM warned our table about more than once, especially because we play with power gamers, and that is, he constantly would tell people, it's like, look, if somebody at this table has like a 30 armor class, and yes, we actually had somebody at the table with a 30 armor class. He did it using a combination of feats, character class abilities and racial abilities, etc., etc. But he had a 30 armor class, and it was ridiculous. Because the GM basically had to stack so many bonuses on top of his creatures in order to hit him. And that was the GM's warning to the rest of us. He said, look, if I have to build something that's strong enough or powerful enough that it can hit him in order to challenge the party, the rest of you are also going to have to suffer from this. So, yeah, it's a case of, don't, be careful what you wish for.
That's when you start sending hundreds of low-level goblins with hand grenades up against them.
Oh, actually, we found that the one of the most disgusting things that you could throw at party member, at anybody actually, was the swarm. Because swarms in 3.5, 3.0, they only have to be in your or in your square to deal damage, and they deal damage consistently every round. They don't have to roll to hit armor class or anything. They just deal damage as long as they're in your square and as long as they're still alive. So, swarm was kind of like the great equalizer. But let's see. Number 3, if you call me or my rolls unfair, I'll get up and go home. And if you got to ride with me, you can find your own way back and suck it up. I almost think that's kind of fair comment, because you're basically calling the GM a cheat, right?
I think that's something very specific that happened.
Yeah.
that's what I think from that.
Yeah, that does sound like a specific instance, but it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're basically calling the GM a cheat for his dice rolls, expect the GM to get pissed off. I don't necessarily know that it's, a really nice thing to, get up and just leave your person that you were taking home, but
yeah. And if there is fudging, it's likely to be as often in your favor as against.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is another reason why we say don't fudge. And if you roll in the open, they can't call your rolls unfair. It's kind of like you rolled it right in front of them. You guys saw the dice. I'm not against you. This is just how the dice landed. Sorry, but that's the way it goes. Number 4, I'm going to take your character's loot away as regularly as you want it given out. Rule 3 will apply here. Okay. So in that context, apparently, he must have had thieves or something steal the party's loot. And yeah, players get pretty mad whenever you steal their loot. Especially if you're still using the loot for XP system. Because then literally you're stealing XP from the party. But I kind of see two sides on this one. One, if someone steals your loot or something gets away with your loot, that's kind of an impetus for your party to go after them and get it back. So that that drives story a little bit. That drives the game a little bit. But the other side of that too is I've seen the dragon hoarders at our table. And we're talking people who literally have tons and tons and tons of gold and won't spend it on anything. And I'm kind of like, realistically, how are you carrying all that? Which is one of the reasons why I get so annoyed about, haversacks and bags of holding and all that crap, because it breaks the very first, one of the very first rules that the game is built on.
Yeah.
But players should have stuff to spend their money on. If they don't, then I don't know. Either I hate to say you're not doing your job as a GM, but either I guess it means that the players really aren't that invested in the game, or you're not giving a good enough stuff away for them to want to buy things, or you're not challenging them enough to spend money on resources that they need in order to survive. I'm not necessarily saying, open up let's go for a trip to the Magic store, because I hate that. I hate that so much. That is the dumbest shit I have ever heard anybody do in any game, and I see a lot of DMs do it. Don't have a Magic store. Don't do it. If you make over-the-counter Magic items readily available to players, I can't begin to stress how dumb that is on so many different levels.
Does depend on the setting, though, of course.
I guess, but I mean, still, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's okay, like if a shady individual is rumored to be selling a particular Magic item or something like that, because that drives plot, that drives narrative, and there is a chance for some money exchange and some adventure. Or even just be as simple as, like, hey, a player needs to go to a mage school or whatever like that to get a specific item enchanted or something like that. Okay, that's commerce that drives things, plus whatever item it is that they're going to have to get enchanted, is going to be out of the player's hands for a little bit. So there's room to work with that, But
yeah,
but don't just have the fucking Magic item shop. That's dumb. Don't do that. Oh, we've got Boots of Elvenkind on sale, $22.95. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Equally, though, sometimes you do have characters with signature items, like one or two things that help define the character, and then it's a bit shit to take those from people. Unless it's the crux of a whole plot.
Yeah. Crafty. I love that. Thank you very much for that announcement. But we're going to save that for Tuesday night with Geeks, okay? All right. Number 5. If you don't act out of any of your persuasion or intimidation or any other social checks, you fail before you even roll. You fail immediately because you aren't even trying, and you're making the game lame for everyone else. Okay, that's basically you're calling somebody out for not role-playing their stuff. I see kind of two sides on that one, because I've had players who sit there at the table and they're like, well, okay, I'm going to roll to intimidate. Okay, I'm going to roll to persuade. I'm going to roll to do this. I'm going to roll to do that. I'm going to roll to do this. And I'm just kind of like, well, it's a role-playing game. You're going to... Do you want at least, want to say a few things or at least try to, act in character before you make your dice roll? But of course, the flip side is some people may not be real comfortable doing that. So
yeah, or just not very good at it.
Yeah.
One way around that is to give people bonuses for just like making the effort. So you tell me how you're intimidating him, you can have a +1 bonus.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's actually helpful for you, the GM, to get them to at least tell you how they're doing it, because it's like, you don't really know how to make the NPC respond. You know, if you tell the guys like, okay, well, I grab him by the shirt and, pull him up to my face and snarl in it. And, it's kind of like, okay, well, the GM now has a basis for how the NPC should react, how other people around them should react. And,
Yeah.
So, I don't necessarily need, when we say don't act out any, you don't have to be like Critical Role. Okay. That's not what he means. He means, at the very least, just try to, give an idea what you're doing. Number 6, if you don't pick up on clues, or if you don't pick up clues for side quests, that's not my problem. Get over yourself. It's not a video game. It's a role-playing, pen and paper-based game with miniatures. I'm not holding your hand if you choose not to pursue stuff. I kind of see that as somewhat fair comment, because it's like, yeah, I've dropped stuff in games hoping that the players will engage with it, and they just steadfastly refuse to do so.
Which is fine too.
It is fine, but past a certain point, it gets to be aggravating, especially when you drop like several different things and they're not really getting involved with any of it. I'm just kind of, well, why are you here? Are you bored? Do you feel bored? Would you like to do something about that? I dropped several things back there for you to get interested in, and you just, went out of your way to ignore them. Unless, of course...
Go on.
I was going to say, unless, of course, they already have an agenda and they're focused on trying to get that objective done first. That's fair comment not to get involved with side quests.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I kind of have the opposite problem. You've got this big overriding thing that you should be doing. And yet in a lot of computer games, it won't matter if you ignore the main quest for ages. You can always come back to it.
Yeah.
Whereas in tabletop, the clock should always be ticking on. And if you don't do something about the big problem, it's going to get worse. So, okay, if you decide you want to spend 6 sessions helping out at the orphanage or whatever. I mean, fine, that's great role play. It's fluffy, it's nice. Maybe it's what your lawful good characters would do. But meanwhile, the Dark Lord is gathering his forces, and you're not doing anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely some time crunch involved, depending on what you've got going on in the game. So I don't know. I guess it's like, pick and choose. Manage your time, see what you can handle as far as your side quests go. But it's a rule not to let a culture casino level fart during you. No monkey Jeebus, but there absolutely should be. That's definitely on the list of things that will upset you as a player or a GM. Number 7, if you move to a square in combat, there's no takebacks. Okay, it's not chess, it's not checkers. Come on, that's.
We used to say if you take your hand off the miniature, that's when you've done your move.
Yeah. And I've seen people retcon their entire turn after it took 5 minutes for them to figure out exactly what they were doing. And again, it breaks down into the tactical nature of the role-playing game. And this was especially bad in 3.0 and 3.5 because they pretty much expect you to have a miniatures board with miniatures on it because of all the AOOs and all of the, mostly because of the AOOs.
Yeah,
because it's like
the 4th edition.
Yeah, because we would warn people. It's kind of like, okay, well, if you step there, you're going to take an attack of opportunity, or if you do this, you're going to take an attack of opportunity, or you don't have enough actions to move and attack, or you can only take this much movement and attack. Or if you do this, you can't do, like flurry of blows because it's a full round action. And that breaks into the action economy and everything, and that's annoying. And it's one of the reasons why I don't like that system. I'm being honest. as granular as 3.0, 3.5, Pathfinder First Edition are, and as good as they are about breaking down every single rule and making a rule for everything, unfortunately, having so many rules seriously curtails, just letting players have fun. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think the take backs thing. I don't know if that's really. I mean, I guess past a certain point, it's almost metagaming. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, well, no, if I'd have known that was going to happen, I wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? And then it becomes metagaming. So,
sometimes it is your fault as the games master. You didn't explain something properly and someone's move doesn't make sense. And then I think takebacks are okay, but...
yeah. I don't know. It's like, I'd call that like an individual case-by-case basis. I wouldn't put a hard and fast rule on it. Unless you just have a lot of people just egregiously breaking that one.
Yeah.
8. You tell every single person what you're doing before you do it. You don't fucking roll dice and then say you're casting Fireball. You tell us all. Okay. I can understand this one. We've had players who do this. They will roll a dice before they say whatever they're going to do, and then they will tell you what they're going to do. And that is metagaming. Because 9 times out of 10, what they're doing is they're rolling their dice, checking ahead of time to see what their dice rolls. Like, let's say, like it rolls a 20. And then ensuring that they get the best possible result out of their dice. And of course, if you roll the dice ahead of time and do it, then they say, well, I just rolled my dice. There you go. I just rolled for it. At that point, as GM, you go like, no, you were fucking with your dice before you said what you were going to do. Now you need to actually roll your dice for your action.
If you have trustworthy players, it can speed things up to have people roll and then report back, though. So...
call it 50-50?
Yeah.
It's a case-by-case basis. A lot of these rules are kind of going to be case-by-case basis, I think. But yeah, that's one I've definitely seen at groups, and it's annoying. And you definitely need to call people out whenever they are metagaming. I had my metagaming rant last week, so. Number 9, I will give out exhaustion more frequently. If you argue, go home, or you can actually fight me over it, or you can DM yourself. Okay. Seems a little extreme. I mean, I can understand giving out exhaustion as a DM. I don't know. I mean, getting up and fighting your player because you're giving it out seems a little much, but if your argument is that bad that you have to come to blows over it, it's kind of like, maybe you need to, move your group or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like they ate the last slice of pizza or something.
Yeah, that's worth fighting someone over.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, as far as exhaustion goes, it's like, okay, well.
Yeah, probably should be used more often.
Yeah. I mean, we already have the whole problem with, hit points not being exactly what they are. Exhaustion should probably play more of a role in the game anyway, because it's like, you have to have something to kind of, show the party. It's like, hey, what you're doing, your consequences have actions. Or your actions have consequences. I'm sorry, not enough caffeine. Excuse me. Raspberry. Number 10. Every snide comment you make to an NPC will be remembered and paid back in triplicate. You all seem to believe there is little consequence. Well, I mean, that's just good DMing, in my opinion, because it's kind of like, yeah, if you're an asshole to an NPC, then they're ostensibly an NP. I mean, we call them NPCs, and people tend to go in the video game logic where it's kind of like, I can treat them like ass, and I don't care because they're not real people. It's like
times are tough.
Yeah, it's like, I know they're not real people, but they're supposed to play like real people, and they're supposed to have like real people feelings, even though they're imaginary people. So
the trouble is, if the shopkeeper gets upset with them, then they just kill them and take what they want anyway.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I would say like it depends on the NPC, but if your first level is lipping off to Sir Hemsworth, and he's like a 10th level warrior or something like that.
10th level Chad.
Yeah, 10th level Giga Chad. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Sir Hemsworth takes his dick out and mushroom stamps him. I don't know. I just Monkey Genius. You're surprised they didn't ban the use of Dungeon Master because I think it's yeah, exactly. That's Silverlock. Yeah, the older you get, the less you deal with the type of people that require making rules like this. Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, this is obviously a DM who has a regular standing group, and he's got some very specific things that he's upset with his group about. This is not like a really good list of rules to use for every single GM at every single table.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think that these guys are actually friends. And in the same way that they're friends get mad at each other. So,
it's either that or it's an experienced GM with a new group that have weird expectations of the game. It could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah, Archer Colin, you're a low level character is rude to an NPC. Game years later, that same now high level character finds that the nemesis who has dogged their every footstep is that same NPC. Yeah, well, it could be that ruthless. I mean, if you really want to do it that way. You remember that snide insult you made to me all those years ago? Well, I mean, and it's true. That's just part of weaving a believable narrative anyway, is that the PC's actions have consequences. If you choose not to, save this village from, zombie attacks or whatever like that, then, the next time you need something and you find out, it's like, oh, well, the person you needed was in that village, but that village was overrun by zombies because nobody went to help them.
Yeah.
11. You will not be given a mega dungeon every session. A temple is not the size of a small city, neither is a cave. This shit will happen when it's natural and organic. Go play some roguelike if you want that. That's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah. Players shouldn't be expecting mega dungeons all the time. Buildings are only so big.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who would. Even back in the old days, dungeons weren't necessarily massive.
Well, I mean, if you're running a module, those tend to be mega dungeony. So, maybe that's the experience that people grew up on. That, and we do have a lot of players who cut their teeth on like Diablo and all this other stuff. But
yeah.
But even in Skyrim, the dungeons aren't necessarily massive. I mean, they're of decent size. They make kind of sense, but they're not like,
There's a few big ones, but most of them aren't.
Yeah. So yeah, it should fit the size. Let's see, we're up to 12. Let me pull it up. That seems fair. We end up going over 11, an hour on this one because this is a lot.
Well, I owe you time anyway. So.
Okay. 12. The travel portion is done. You want to travel continents doing literally whatever you want, whenever you want. Go play World of Warcraft or play D&D with ChatGPT. I mean...
I don't quite know what they mean with that. Do they mean they're not going to role play out all the travel, or?
I think that's what that means. I think that means that, you know, the DM doesn't want to role play all the travel portion out. It's like, you know, and that's fair. Sometimes you do. You just want to get to the damn dungeon.
I struggle with travel and making it interesting. Because it's all very well in a film or something. You can do a sweeping shot of the mountains and the party is tiny little figures struggling through a snowdrift or something. But that's just exposition when you're the GM. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, we saw shots of stuff like that during Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, but you know, it's the same thing as, yeah, that movie would have been like 3 or 4 more hours longer if they had, you know, gone day by day.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monkey. We talked about Klobby last week. It was rough. As for me myself, it kind of depends on what I have planned. Like, okay, like I give you a good example. Like I ran last time when I ran Zombicide Chronicles, I had a specific objective that the players had to get to and had to resolve in order for the game to really continue. Because it's like, you know, the characters had no shelter. And that's one of the main staples of the game is you got to have a shelter. So I was kind of intent that the players get to their shelter and either keep it or abandon it and have to find another one. And I knew we only had a limited amount of time to play. And, you know, the Zombicide Chronicles has a system in place for travel that is supposed to be pretty expedient anyway, because it's supposed to be objective-based. Which rankled some players, and I understand why. But at the same time, it's kind of like, look, we need to get to this. You know, I don't really have time for you to be, you know, delving into every ruin that you find along the way. So we need to speed this up. And yeah, Kit, there you go. Yeah, redlining is a legit tool if the plot doesn't demand playing out a journey to a relevant place. Yeah, I agree. And see, that was one of those cases. It was kind of like, yeah, we really need to get to this so that the main bulk of the adventure can happen.
Yeah.
And you know, and I at least tried to, you know, use the rules to give some interesting bonuses, penalties, and other things along the way so that players had some stuff going on anyway. So it didn't feel like a completely glossed over encounter. Anyway, let's see. It was the Dark Lord Keith all along. Yes, exactly. 13. If you're late for no good reason, I'm going to have your character's hit points for the entire session.
Of their experience.
Yeah. Have their experience. Don't have their hit points. That has no reason to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't make internal sense, whereas less XP kind of does.
Yeah, that's just mean. But obviously he's using it as a, you know, obviously he's had players who were pretty late a lot, and so he's just annoyed at it happening.
Yeah.
14. If you don't show up for no good reason, and that will be determined by me alone if no one else has the guts to say shit for fear of upsetting one another, the first time you'll find yourself losing either a while level up to major 3 items of your own. Yeah. The second time you do it in a row, you'll be removed from the chat and the group, full stop. I have no fucking time for people who do not show up. I mean, things happen. I don't necessarily say that that's a really 100% fair rule. Things happen. Sometimes you're just not in the mood to do it, you know. I missed Sunday's game, for example, because sorry, I mean, it's my first Father's Day without my father, and that was kind of a rough day for me and my mother. So yeah, I took that day off because, you know, family comes first.
Yeah, it is annoying though. You're not asking that much from people, really, to show up for a game, especially if it's an online game. You know, but that's part of the problem. Online games don't feel like a proper commitment the way face-to-face games do.
True.
This isn't me criticizing you or anything. I'm just saying, in general, you know, it is annoying when you've put that much effort in and people fail to show up without proper excuses, and they don't let you know they're not showing up. That's the part that really bothers me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've had people who miss games for really unusual reasons. Some of them, you know, are good. Some of them are bad. I don't know. I don't know. Harmony, I kind of wish she was here about that. But I mean, I guess one of the ways that she manages to keep her group together is the fact that, you know, she asks for payment.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that's, you know, some people might say, oh, that's shitty. I was like, no, it makes sense. Because if you're paying to be there, you're committed.
Yeah.
You know? It's your money. Either you get your money's worth out of it or you don't. And you have that expectation up front.
Or if you're streaming the game and that makes money, that you get some kind of cut off, that also motivates people.
Mm-hmm. Interesting thing, and I mean, since we've gotten this deep into it, I figured I'd mention, you know, Critical Role. Because everybody's, you know, seems to always talk about Critical Role anyway. And a lot of people who probably will watch this may mention Critical Role. Those guys get paid to be there. It's a job. So they're always there pretty much, unless it's something serious, you know, they can't be there that week, or in which case I'm sure they've arranged it ahead of time.
It's just, it's just one other way Critical Role isn't like real role playing. Like, nobody just doesn't show up without any reason, and you have to sit around for half an hour trying to figure out where they are, and then start the game anyway without them, and explain what the character is doing. That doesn't happen with them.
Mm-hmm. But also going back to problematic personalities and stuff like that for Critical Role, I don't necessarily know that all those people who play the game are really good friends in real life. I mean, ostensibly they are. They sure act like they are on camera and all that. But again, that's on camera. It's a show. Off camera, they may not have any interactions beyond that. I mean, I would think that if it's your job to be there every week, it's kind of like, well, I don't usually hang out with a lot of people from my job because, you know, I see these people every day at work. I don't want to fucking see them every day, you know, when I'm on my leisure time. I mean, that's just the way I am. But the time they did have a problem player, I guess his name was Orion. They had a problem player because, you know, that he cheated and, you know, he had some various other things and stuff go on, and they removed him. They got rid of him pretty quick. So, you know, that's...
I always feel sorry for the problem player. I know I shouldn't, but quite often they're quite socially isolated, and like this is their only outlet, and the reason they cheat is because they want to be cool and included and so on. And it's just, I don't know. I'm a softie.
I don't know. But anyway. Yeah, you should show up if you can. If you can't, then yeah, at least give somebody a good reason why you weren't there.
Yeah. Or let people know ahead of time.
If you can.
Yeah.
Because sometimes things happen.
Sometimes you can't, and that's fair enough. But failing to show up without any explanation is a dick move.
Yeah. If you're stuck in the toilet that morning and you've got like the raging shits and, you know, you can't take more than 5 steps from it, it's kind of like that's kind of a good reason not to be there.
Yeah. So, yeah. Quick text. I'm having a medical incident. I will see you next week.
Yeah. 15. If you get too stoned or drunk to play, I will go home without a warning. Your warning is here. That's pretty case specific. nobody at my table drinks or gets high. So
Okay, well, I have to deal with both of those problems probably more often than a lot of people do, particularly in Britain. We have a very strong drinking culture, and the drinking culture around gaming is pretty strong the moment you hit an age to drink, or even a couple of years before. So I have had to deal with drunk players very, very, very often, especially when we used to LARP, because the places you could hire for LARP were often pubs, which meant there were drinks, and the people running the pub wanted you to spend lots of money on drinks as well as hiring the room, because that's why they were letting you use their venue. So that could be a bit of a problem. You get to be kind of an amateur bouncer, learning to de-escalate situations, or tell someone, yeah, you're a bit too wasted to play. Why don't you just go and sit over here? I have had the same problem at conventions, but someone at the table drunk is much less of a problem than they are at LARPs, and generally they just kind of doze off or pass out anyway. The stone thing is annoying. All of my regular players are massive stoners and were massive stoners back in the day too. It usually wasn't too much of a problem. In fact, it got people to loosen up and roleplay a bit more. The one problem you have is when someone does a massive rip on a bong just as you're about to start and then goes to sleep immediately. So,
which leads into Rule 16. If you get up for a bong or smoke or whatever breaks every 10 minutes, I will simply pack up and go home. I'm sick of waiting for every bloke to be at the table.
Yeah. So we used to be in houses where you were allowed to smoke inside, so the weed and so on didn't interrupt things too much. Now you have to smoke outside, but everyone's much more mature and isn't getting up every 5 minutes. So we have like scheduled smoke breaks for the people who like weed. So that works fine.
Yeah. And I haven't had to deal with a lot of smokers at the table and stuff like that, but when we do, it's kind of like, yeah, it's fine. Either find a break in the action to go do your thing, or whatever. It's kind of like the guy who gets up to go make a sandwich or whatever and comes back or has to go pee or whatever. It's, if you don't schedule breaks naturally, like we do for our online stuff, then give people breaks. But I mean, yeah, if you're doing it a lot, then it's kind of like past a certain point, it's just kind of like, did you really want to do this? Did you really want to be here? Or are you doing this as a form of task avoidance? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you got to manage. You do kind of have to manage what your players are up to. So, know what it's all about. It's kind of like, like, hey man, I noticed you're taking like a lot of breaks away from the table today. Is there something going on? Are you pissed about something? Or something not going your way? Or are you preoccupied? Is this not a good night for you? What? I mean, because this is getting to be annoying, because I'm trying to run the game here, and you got like, you've been getting up every 5 minutes to either go piss, go check your phone, or whatever like that.
Yeah.
17. Guidance, divination spells, owls, and whatever spells I decide are too fucking stupid are banned outright. No more fucking guidance. I don't know about that one. I mean, I've never had players do that.
Guidance spam can be kind of annoying. But in a world where the gods are real, someone being guided by their god constantly kind of makes sense. Playing Baldur's Gate, you practically had guidance on every single roll you made, as long as you had what's her name in your party. So yeah, I don't.
I've never had it abused at my table in any game I've ever played, but I don't know. I guess if it's overused, I would see there's a problem with it. But I mean,
it's it is kind of constantly used, but it's one of those things. It's an emergent aspect of 5th edition, I think. Guidance and Eldritch Blast, those typify 5th edition players, I think.
Guidance, I think, is just because either 5th edition players are young and they don't either fully get it, or
it's a bonus, and it's a constant bonus, and it's a cantrip that you can use for free. So why wouldn't you? You know?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with that one, so I have to defer to Jim on that one. 18. You get one chance at a skill check. If you fuck up, your party doesn't get their chance to do the same check. Think careful who's good at what. That's kind of fair. We had this problem with Pathfinder, especially because people would stack bonuses on their skills so high that it became a case of they cannot fail the skill checks. So, you know, and the other part of it too was the fact that, you know, even if you're rolling passive, if you have like 5 people in the party that all have like passive perception and it's all being rolled all at the same time, they're never going to fail a check. Because just by, you know, the virtue of the fact that you've got 5 people rolling, there's 5 chances, they all have decent perception checks to begin with. So chances are they're never going to fail a perception check. Our GM did get around that by saying, it's like, look, okay, we're just going to have one person make the check. And if they, you know, and it's pass or fail. If they get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. So yeah. I call that fair.
Yeah.
Because otherwise...
yeah, well, so sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't. I've seen various games try to get around this in various ways. Like, if you fail, you can try again, but the difficulty goes up 1 step. Or if you fail, you can spend a willpower point to try again, or roll willpower to try again. You know, otherwise you've just lost your patience with it. Things like that. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there's any sort of hard and fast rule you can make about that. Because I mean, you could keep continuing to try and pick a lock unless you broke it or broke your picks. Mm-hmm. There's no particular reason why you shouldn't keep going at it. Yeah.
And one thing that's really important to reiterate too, I've said from the past, is like, if your game, if whatever scenario you're running, if whatever it is absolutely vitally dependent on the players making a skill check in order to proceed or to find that one vital piece of evidence or like that, you need to find a workaround for that, because rolls fail.
Yeah.
So
don't hinge anything on a roll.
Yeah. Don't make a roll be your be all end all, especially if it's something that's so critically important to your game. 19. Discussion of metagame details in game will result in instant damage to your character. That's rough, but
depends what he means, I guess. Because you know, figure out who's good at what. You know, you're metagaming if you ask someone, okay, who's got the highest skill level at this? You do the roll. Technically, that's metagaming, but then he's just asked people to basically do that.
I think it may more deal with stuff like your party encounters a rust monster for the very first time. Group of first levels, never seen a rust monster in their entire life. And suddenly somebody says, oh, that's a rust monster. We need to, and their characters start acting in a way that, you know, it's like, oh, we need to pull out the wooden weapons and all this kind of stuff. Or, or it's a vampire. We've never seen a vampire before. We've never actually had any experience whatsoever with a vampire, but we instantly know to pull out the wooden stakes, garlic and crosses and shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, that is metagaming, and that is bad form. And I don't like metagaming. I don't necessarily know to do instant damage to your character, but
yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't hand out damage. Maybe I would say, okay, the monster rolls for advantage for the rest of this encounter to compensate for your meta knowledge. Something like that. You know, that would make more sense.
Yeah, penalize, but don't. But you know, yeah. 20. Rules lawyering fellow players is encouraged. Actually, me will just result in me telling you to fuck off. Okay, that's a pet peeve of mine. We have a rules lawyer at my table who constantly undercuts other people's actions, by saying, well, you couldn't do that because of this, that, or the other. Or it says here that this is how that works and all that. And I understand it, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's annoying. It got to the point where I started looking over to McCulling and saying, okay, Blue Falcon, what are you going to do now? I can understand rules lawyering your fellow players because it's like, you're kind of helping them figure out how stuff works because one, they could unknowingly be getting an advantage where they shouldn't be or otherwise, just kind of throwing the game off by using something incorrectly. Doing it to a GM, I don't know. I mean, there's been times when you've corrected me on a rule or something like that, and it's like, I don't get upset about it.
Yeah, and there's other times I've been wrong. To me, rules lawyer means something different. It's someone using the letter of the rules to cheat, like the peasant railgun or things like that.
Yeah. Actual rules lawyers, in order to get an advantage, that's just fucking annoying. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's a Harmony. Hey, Harmony. You're welcome to step in if you want to, Harmony. You got the link. 21. You roll your dice within view of two players who aren't your standard. You roll them neatly. You roll them neatly, and you roll them on the table. Failing to do these things will auto-fail whatever roll you did. Arguing that you actually rolled validly when you clearly didn't is an automatic critical fail. Well, okay. That kind of also goes back to the roll your dice in open view of everybody else. I have had a player who rolled their dice, and before anybody could get a look at the dice or anything like that, they would swoop their hand in really quick and pick up the dice. Okay, I got it. Or I got a 17, or I got an 18, or I got a 16, or whatever, That was bullshit. Because we know they were cheating.
Yeah. But dice can just randomly decide to bounce out of the table, even if you roll them quite gently. Shit happens.
Yeah. I would say, have a little bit of dice etiquette on that. Otherwise, you're probably cheating. Or you'll be suspected of cheating. 22. Instant death traps and mechanics are coming into place. If you call these things unfair moving forward, I will laugh at you and tell you to fuck off and cry some more. I mean, I get it. I mean, and it is kind of fair because, especially old school games, there were a lot of save or die traps and instant kills, especially if you decided to run something horrible like the Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't care what anybody says. The Tomb of Horrors is a terrible, terrible adventure, and nobody should ever play that.
It's a rite of passage.
I mean, it is there just to punish people. It has no other reason to exist.
It's like Disney.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like episode 3 of The Acolyte. Yeah, I would say that's fair. Sometimes. Well, okay. I suppose one of the biggest peeves on this one is the fact that, if a player has a choice between leaping off of a cliff and it's 300 feet fall, and in the old rules it was well, you can only take so much damage, you can only take so many dice of damage, and they're kind of metagaming, and they know well, I might actually survive the whatever it is, like 66 d6 worth of damage
Yeah,
somehow.
because I've got hit points, which don't make any sense anyway.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Yeah, instant death and all that is fair. It may seem like it's unfair, but like if the GM gives you a warning ahead of time, it's like, hey, they see these 2 blocks. This block is like, a 1,500 ton, block of stone. It's ready to drop if you hit this pressure plate, and the dude walks up and hits the pressure plate. Then it's like, yeah, your character doesn't get a saving throw. I mean, your character might get a saving throw to avoid it.
Yeah,
but if
you're
they
not going
don't,
to walk through that stone slab like Ken from Fist of the North Star walking through a collapsing building. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, you're gonna die. If there's a big giant vat of acid and your character decides to try to swim through it, well, yeah, you kind of reap what you sow on that one. All right, we're up to 22. Oh man, we're only halfway through with these things. But it's only 1
We're doing
hour.
all right.
So, yeah, we're doing okay. All right.
I think
Like I
they
said,
get less involved as we go on.
I do. 23. I will not give you random magical items, and vendors will not stock them. They are meant to be rare and hard to acquire. Fair. I mean, I've already pretty much covered that. Enough said, I think. What do you think?
A charlatan with Nistel's magical aura goes a long way.
It does. 24. Random encounters in the form of random dungeons or strange, mysterious road traders or a band of goblin prostitutes isn't going to happen. Go play Baldur's Gate 3. That's table specific for him, I think.
Yeah. Does he mean no random encounters are going to happen, or?
I think that one, it goes back to what do you have ready to go?
Yeah.
If you have a definite objective that the players have to reach and have to do in order to continue the game, then it's kind of like, yeah, road encounters and random encounters probably, need to at least take a back seat that session. But
Yeah.
if you got nothing planned that day and you're like me and you run a sandbox and it's kind of like, you're just throwing stuff out there for players to get involved with, and by all means, ignore that and just have fun with it. A band of goblin prostitutes? Sure. Ironcaster immediately perks up. 24. Or no, 25. I don't give 2 fucks what Reddit said about X or Y ruling. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. If you're having a hard time coming up with something for a ruling, sometimes it's useful to search the internet and find what someone else has done, but players shouldn't be bringing up Reddit and saying, yeah, but in this game they did this. No, fuck you.
Yeah, well, that's their game. This is not our game.
Yeah.
And I've had players who did that before. They said like, well, this is how they rule it on the internet. Well, that's great. This is your game.
Yeah, the weirdest thing about post-internet gaming is that there's like an orthodoxy beyond the table of how you do this and that and the other. Whereas it used to be, every table was divergent to some degree. And now instead of every table, everyone's got an OSR system.
Well, I mean, you think about it, that's one of the reasons why we spend so much time arguing on X so much.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it wrong. 26, I actually give less of a fuck about what your mate's D&D group did. Same. I mean, it's like, that's cool.
Yeah. Again, my table.
Yeah, my table. 27, saying anything to me about other players not liking me doing X or Y without them saying it directly to me will result in me kicking you out of the group. Don't use someone else to push your own agenda.
That sounds like something specific again.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
I can understand.
You should give me my magic sword because everyone hates you and doesn't like that you're not giving them anything.
Yeah. Or, like Grim really doesn't like it when you do this, and I don't either, so maybe you should quit doing that. Well, it's funny because Grim never said anything to me about it. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. Is this really something that you want to talk about? I mean, don't do it at the table.
Yeah.
28. You're not to sit down and have a 2-hour discussion about what Samson from Bundora Secondary did 3 weeks ago when you come to play. Take 15 to 20 minutes I use to set up and review my notes to talk to each other, then sit down and play. Okay. That is... I have kind of mixed feelings about that one because it's kind of like, yeah, they're... Especially when you're all getting together in person to play, there does kind of become a, hey, what'd you do last week? And that kind of, there is a little bit of bullshit time ahead of the game usually.
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
Yeah. In the middle of the game, probably not a good time to do that.
That's it. I don't know. Gossip, catching up, and going off on tangents. I think they're part of the game. They're kind of like mid-game breaks sometimes. We often go off on tangents on Tabletopless. Weirdly,
I've noticed.
Yeah, but that's it's part of the fun, and it's important to me to present gaming kind of as it is, minus the nakedness. So,
I mean, that's fair.
But if you got a regular group, people generally become friends, and then they're interested in what everyone's been up to, and there's a data exchange when you all meet up again. That's only natural, and that's fine.
Yeah, and it's true. Certain situations in the game, like somebody saying something or something happening, and it jogs somebody's memories. Like, oh, you know what? Something like this just happened to me the other day.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, yeah. Did you hear about Marvel vs. Capcom?
Yeah. 29. Saying shit like, guys, come on, we're not here to have fun. We're here to play D&D. This is serious business. Is rude and dismissive of how much work I put into this. I will simply go home if I hear this shit.
I'm guessing that's meant to be, they said that sarcastically?
Yeah. That sounds really, really table specific, but I'm guessing he complained at some point and somebody said, guys, come on, we're not here to have fun. We're here to play D&D. It's serious business.
What?
That is kind of shitty.
Fun has a lot of definitions, right? Some people like roller coasters. I don't. Some people like horror films. Some people like comedies, and taking your fun seriously has a long and storied tradition. So it's a bit oversensitive, but it is also dickish to be like that about the game.
It is. And I was in a group at one point that, we would meet regularly and we had a lot of expectations and rules kind of in place. And after a while, some of the other newer players would, complain to me. They'd be like, man, this is, why, we're doing this all the time. It's like, this feels like a job. I'm like, well, they take their gaming seriously. So, but they're good. So, 30, don't fucking order food randomly. We will eat together at a specific time or not at all. I don't want food shit all over my things. That seems really table specific. I don't have a problem with people ordering food randomly as long as it's not like in the middle of a combat.
Yeah. We usually all order at the same time, even though we might order from different places because people have allergies and, things that they like and things that they don't, but we all eat at about the same time, and that's kind of a scheduled break. And we still talk about the game, planning, what we're going to do when we go back.
Yeah. And in the case of my game, oftentimes, food will arrive while we're in the middle of gaming, and we'll be eating while we game, but everybody has their own books. So if you're getting shit on the books, you're getting shit on your own books.
Yeah. Don't get pizza grease on the books.
Yeah.
And that's more common, Blim burns Cheeto. From spliffs.
Yes. And by all means, goddammit, the Cheeto fingers, no. Or the Dorito fingers. That's just as bad. Hey, man, can I borrow your player's handbook? Not until you go wash your fucking hands.
New monster, Cheeto Goblin. Everything it touches tastes of cheese.
You know what? I'm going to write that up. The Cheeto
Suddenly
Goblin.
you ward him off with your shield, and suddenly everywhere you go, there's mice and rats following you, trying to gnaw on your shield.
Well, they're just insanely attracted to wizard spell books. 31.
You can't read the text to a magic missile. It's got cheese fingers, whatever.
Yeah, you must spend a round cleaning the Dorito crumbs off of your spell book in order to cast.
If you cast it without doing so, the spell becomes cheese themed.
Ironcaster, yeah, pretzels are a great gaming snack. No, they're not. They're tasteless, crunchy pieces of dough. They're not any kind of a snack at all. They're full of shame. They have no flavor. No. You might as well just eat it. You might as well just, lick a salt block or something. 31. No food or drinks near any of my D&D gear. This sounds like this kind of tapers into 30. If you wreck something, you can pay for it. I let one person trash my DM screen once, and I never had it replaced by them. In fact, I had that person attempt to gaslight me into believing they didn't wreck my shit at all. I'm not stupid. You're an adult. Accept responsibility. That's kind of fair. We did have a player at the table who actually got banned from having drinks at the table because inevitably he would knock his fucking drink over and spill it all over people's shit all the time.
We've got a player who doesn't show up very often anymore, but he will have various drinks through the day, drink half of them and leave the glass somewhere random. So you end up with a house full of half full glasses everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I myself would usually get around this problem by bringing a bottled drink, whether it was water, Coke, or whatever. So, as long as you got a cap for it, not a big deal. Now, at the gaming store I worked at, we would have open gaming nights, and we did have a definite rule about no open beverage containers, or no containers without lids. And it was for that reason, because people would knock shit over and spill it all over our carpets and tables and other people's stuff. And yeah. But, the other part of that too is someone trashing someone else's stuff. Okay. Yeah. You really should be an adult and replace that. It's like, yeah, if you spill, Dr. Pepper all over my player's handbook that I loaned you, then yeah, that's your player's handbook now, baby. Just get me another one before the next session.
Yeah.
32. Arguments between party members outside of roleplay will be resolved by me giving the definite ruling. If you don't like it, fuck off back home. Ugh. Okay.
Sounds specific again.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I've seen arguments between party members happen outside of roleplay. And that does sound specific. It's like, yeah, if two players are having a hard time dealing with shit, whether it happened in-game or not, then it's kind of like, yeah. I mean, you're there to act as a judge and jury and referee and whatever like that, but at the same time, it's kind of like, two people are really having a problem. They probably need to talk it out away from the table. 33. I don't give a fuck what they did in Critical Role or what that one guy on Reddit said, or if you think that it's all make-believe so you can do whatever you want. The world I run works on internal rulings and lore I created specifically for it. Yeah. I kind of agree on that. Every game world is different, and every GM is different. So
yeah, that's running up against the Butma Dragons argument.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's fantasy. I can do anything. It doesn't matter. No, it still has rules.
And typically we end up with, like, since we're nerds, it's like usually the Star Wars or the Star Trek things. Well, that's not how it works in Star Trek. Well, I don't give a fuck how it works in Star Trek. Although, that said, if you're playing the Star Wars role-playing game, and you do something, and then someone mentions like a lore piece, then you can say, well, Well, Disney has proven that all that lore doesn't mean shit anymore, so fuck you. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know on that one. But seriously, it's like it is your table. It's your right to make rulings and run stuff how you want to. And players, I think, should be free to make suggestions, but at the same time, it's kind of like, that's a suggestion. That sounds like his problem with something specific.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of these examples really are. All right, we're on to the last page. Let's see. Bring it up. Boom. And this is the most people I've seen watching our chat for a while now. We must be good today.
It's my star power.
It's because you're here, yeah. 34. Every single person in this chat is having debuffs applied to their characters that should have occurred a long time ago. This will be specific to characters.
Too specific for us to comment on.
Yeah, I need context for that one. Obviously, something must have happened in their game that, they should have had stuff apply to.
Or they were claiming bonuses they weren't entitled to or something.
Yeah. 35. You don't bring your sheet, you don't play. Well, that's kind of, yeah. There have been cases where I didn't bring my character sheet and the GM let me roll up another character really quickly. So there's that. I guess it depends, on your game and your mileage and whether the group's willing to wait for you.
I mean, it has been a problem in the past with people losing their character sheets, but now that you can store them online, you don't really have that excuse so much anymore. If you can store your sheet on Google Files or whatever, there's not really an excuse for not being able to get hold of an up-to-date copy.
Yeah. And I mean, most people these days, since they play off their phone or whatever like that, it's kind of like, they always have their phone with them. So,
yeah.
36. If you don't bring dice, borrow some. Again, that's logical. Most players have extra sets of dice. Worst case scenario, if you have your phone, Google has a dice rolling app.
Yeah, and there are plenty of other dice rolling apps of varying quality.
Yeah. So, not really an issue. 37. When we play D&D, I'm not your friend. That doesn't mean you treat me like an enemy during the game. It means I'm no longer being nice. I don't know about that one. I do have a player who does tend to treat the DM as if he is the adversary. As in, like, I'm trying to beat you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've had a player before who was an absolute prick in the game. Like, his characters were always assholes, and he himself would become more asshole-ish and more aggressive and shit during play, either as a GM or as a player. Outside of the game, he was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
So
the game just brought something out of him.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, as a GM, I don't really know how to handle this one because it's kind of like I don't feel like I'm anybody's enemy when I'm GMing. I'm there to let everybody have a good time. You may not always be having a good time. I'm definitely not out to fuck you in character or PC wise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a case of I want to see you suffer. I want you to not have fun. I want you But at the same time, it doesn't mean I'm gonna just let you do whatever you want to have your way.
Yeah. And everyone's got to have fun at some point, including the games master. It doesn't mean you're going to get everything your way all of the time.
Yeah. 38. If you treat me poorly in any way, shape, or form after or during or before the game due to something that happened in the game, you're out. If you cannot separate a game from reality, I think you are a fucking moron, and I have little time to deal with that energy. That's a specific case, but I understand it. Because it's like,
but sometimes the games master is being a dick. So
Sometimes the game master is being a dick, but at the same time, yeah, if you're being a dick back, one tends to amplify the other. And if it's like, okay, it's like Grim. If we play a game and then afterwards, I tell you, you're a fucking shithead, man. I can't believe you fucking did that to me, you asshole.
Well, you usually say that in an admiring way when you do say it.
That's true. It's hard to separate it, but I mean, like, in a serious way, then that's kind of abusive. So I can understand that. Yeah, don't be a dick to your GM, basically. And if they are being a dick to you in game, ask them. It's like, you are just being this way in game, right? You didn't really mean to, call me, the best part of my mom, or best part of me ran down the crack of my mom's ass.
Yeah.
But this also sounds like something that, a case of where something happened to a character in game and that player immediately got hostile, pissy with the DM, and proceeded to be a shithead to the DM the entire night and afterward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have seen that happen before too. And that is bullshit. And that should be well, you know what? I don't fucking need you if you're going to act like this. So,
yep.
I kind of think that one's justified. 39. You will submit your spell lists daily in-game. If you do not give me a spell list each in-game day, you will not be allowed to cast a single spell or cantrip in combat. I do not trust you guys to not use this against me. It's a little micromanagey. I guess if you're that worried about what the players are going to cast, you could do this, but I personally don't see a need to. I kind of trust my players to be adults about it. As I've said before, it's if you're cheating, you're only cheating yourself.
It does sound like someone was cheating and not crossing off their spells or keeping track of their slots properly.
Well, that actually crosses into Rule 40, but
yeah.
But yeah, Rule 40 is if you do not mark off spell slots or say something like, I remember what I'm at as a way to justify it, I will simply fail your spell, deal half your health and damage to you, and say you have 2 spells to cast for the rest of the day. So
his punishments all seem a bit over the top to me.
They do. I think 39 and 40 kind of taper in together. 1, he wants a list of all your spells for the day, so that 2, he can keep track of exactly what you're casting and when you cast it and all that. And it's like, aha, you can't cast that anymore. You've already used all your castings of that day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's micromanagey. I don't have time for that shit. I'm too busy running the game. I don't. This is probably something that needs to be said. Is like, as a DM, I don't have time to fucking police your shit. I don't. Yeah. I'm too busy trying to run the game. I'm trying to keep track of tables. I got, 4 to 6 people at a table asking me questions all at the same time. I'm having to answer. I can't do that and also keep up with your spells, special abilities, feats, character shit. I can't do it. And I'm not gonna do it. It's not my job.
The more stuff you can offload onto the players to keep track of, the better. But you got to be able to trust them. So that's why I always liked the way Deadlands Merits and Flaws worked, because it made the players sort of self-police their own characters.
Mm-hmm. It's always good when you have a system that can do that, but not very many do.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything you can do to take your burden off the DM, and just being honest with your spell use and tracking your shit is part of it. 41, if you break literally anything, you can buy the replacement that day or not attend until you do. I think that also kind of tapers back into that guy messing up his DM screen.
Yeah.
Online games, you don't usually have to worry about people breaking your shit, so it's not big of a deal. In real life, That's just a courtesy. If you go to somebody's house and you sit on one of their chairs and your fat ass breaks their chair, yeah, you should probably replace that, because that's the fair, nice, and humane thing to do. People are providing you with something so that you can come enjoy it. So it's your job to take care of it. Be a responsible fucking adult. We shouldn't have to tell you that.
Yeah.
42. If you complain about the choice of music, I fully expect you to bring the whole playlist the next session or shut the fuck up. I mean, two thoughts on that one. One, at my regular gaming table, my DM prohibits the use of music because he thinks it distracts from the game. I highly disagree, but having played with him for over 20 years, I'm used to it. So it's like, okay, well, whatever. We just have to get used to gaming in silence, or, the sound of our own voices. It's fine.
I think music without lyrics is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose music without lyrics is probably better, just because, you don't want players breaking out into, song in the middle of their turn or whatever.
Well, and because multiple voices, because they're in the same sort of sonic range, so it's much more disruptive.
Yeah. But in this case, I think he's specifically complaining about choice of music. So it's kind of like, maybe the GM liked, playing opera or something during the thing, and somebody didn't like it, or I don't know. Yeah. I've never had anybody complain about my music choices in game. In fact, I got a compliment on my music choices recently. Of course, I have a little experience. I used to be a DJ, so. That sounds like a very specific thing. All I can say is, probably the best piece of advice on that is, if you're going to play music during a game session, at least make it kind of thematic and maybe change it up a little bit here and there. Yeah. Like, I had somebody do the soundscapes thing once. And initially, they were playing a piece of music, during like the Manticore battle that we were having. And hearing that piece of music once was pretty good. And the second time it was okay. The combat went on for quite a while. So by about the 6th or 7th time that piece of music was rolling around, I was like... So I would say, if you're going to use music, especially during combat, make it something that's kind of long or not too repetitive, or at least kind of fun to listen to, or, vary it up a little.
Or let everyone contribute an equal number of tracks to a playlist. Back when it used to be like CD multi changes, you could have like 6 CDs loaded up. We would each choose one CD and put it in.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be kind of cool too. Then again, everybody gets kind of a choice,
Yeah.
As long as nobody decides, like the greatest hits of Dionne Warwick is really what they want to play during the middle of,
Boss battle, Taylor Swift comes on.
Yeah. And I'm definitely not playing, your sex music during the... 43. Cannot stress enough how little I care about how you feel about my rulings from now on. Okay, that's specific. That's obviously very frustrated. That's kind of hard to say. I mean, players can have a legitimate gripe about your ruling, especially if they think it's too hard or something like that. They shouldn't bring it up during the game.
Yeah.
That should be like an after game, where you talk to the GM. It's like, hey, can I talk to you about that ruling you made the other day? It's like, I kind of thought that was a little unfair.
Yeah.
That's legit. I mean, and your GM should address it. But it's clear too, also, that once the GM addresses it, then that should be the end of it. It shouldn't be like a serious like point of contention that goes on and on and on and on. You know, like, you know, the next time it happens during a gaming session, you're like, hey, you know, that thing is still happening. So, Rule 44, I'm never just threatening you, I'm promising you. I don't know how to deal with that one. I mean, I don't think a DM should have to threaten his players. That just seems not only unprofessional, it just kind of seems like it's just like a little over the top. You know, you can jokingly play with players. It's like, oh yeah, you guys keep it up, and I'm going to throw a Balrog at you or something. That's, I mean, that's threatening, but it's also, you know, it's a joke or whatever. You know, it's not serious.
Yeah, I think this is just a very, very frustrated man.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think this is a guy who plays with regular players and has a definite, you know, rapport with his group already. He knows his group. He couldn't get away with doing this and expect to keep a group if they weren't friends. You know?
Yeah. He might be better off finding a different group, to be honest.
He might. I mean, you know, but it may be a case of, you know, he's comfortable with these people. He's known them for a long time. So,
yeah.
You know, like I said, I don't see these not all these 44 rules are specific, or they are specific and don't necessarily apply to every single group out there. And they certainly shouldn't be taken as a set of guidelines for everything that you should deal with as a DM or as a player. But, you know, there's definitely good cause for some of those. And there's some of those things I do agree with, and some of them I don't.
Yeah.
Or some of them are subject to interpretation and whatever is going on at the time.
I'm guessing the reaction online has mostly been, this is terrible, this is an awful Games Master.
Yeah. My understanding is it got posted and then it got pulled very, very fast. So, yeah.
Yeah, wasn't it one of his players who posted it?
Maybe. I don't know the context for it, to be honest. Like I said, Ironcaster threw it at me, and I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, well, let's go over it, because it's got legs. But yeah, I think a lot of that is very player specific. I don't necessarily know that GM is a bad GM or good GM or whatever. I couldn't honestly say, you know, if somebody was expecting me to say, oh yeah, this guy's just, oh, he's horrible, I wouldn't play under this guy. I think for the most part, most of his stuff is actually sort of reasonable. I mean, like, because a lot of what he's complaining about is player behavior.
Yeah.
So if you show up and you're a good player, you know, meaning, you know, you take your turns in a timely fashion, you don't argue, you keep track of your stuff, you don't spill Coke all over everything and take constant smoke breaks and get off topic and all that, then you're probably not going to have a lot of problems with this GM. And, you know, as much as people are complaining about the GMs, it's also incumbent on people to be good players. You know? Show up to your game on time, have your shit, you know, get what you need done.
Don't break my shit.
Yeah, don't break my shit. You know, there's etiquette on both sides of the table, and everybody should be following it. And, you know, it's not unreasonable. A lot of these expectations aren't really that unreasonable. His way of dealing with them seems unreasonable and over the top, but that's because obviously he was pretty frustrated about either an ongoing issue or something that has been, you know, like a long-term deal that he's been dealing with. So I can't say anything necessarily bad about this guy's role playing or about this guy's DMing. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think it's most of it's reasonable. I think the punishments are over the top, but the sentiments are pretty much ones I've had myself.
Iron Guesser, Rule 45, bathe. Well, that's part of being a good player, you know? Nobody wants to smell you. I'm sure, given what we've dealt with as players, as GMs, and everything else, we could probably easily come up with 44 rules of our own about things that players do that annoy us, that we would like to see curbed or otherwise handled at a table.
Yeah.
You know, because like I said, everybody's different. Everybody's going to grade on each other. It happens. But yeah, I don't think I have anything specific to say bad about this guy. So
No, it seems all right, mostly.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do we have anything else, or?
No, don't think so. I think
Okay.
that we covered a lot and talked a lot about it.
We did. My throat's raw, so. So there we go, guys. That's our look at the 44 rules that were posted. You know, take from it what you will. I think the bottom line is, you know, don't put it all on the GM. Be a good player too. Be courteous. Do what you're supposed to do as a player. Show up. You know, don't be a dick to other people or your GM. Be considerate. Yeah. Be kind. You know, just be a basic, decent human fucking being.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get out what you put in.
Yeah. Honestly, you do. Because it's like if you invest of yourself in the game and you know, you're working towards it, you know, your enthusiasm and stuff will show, people will like it and they'll enjoy it. I mean, some of the coolest things I've seen other players at the table do for the GM or for other players. We had one person who made like little sticks with everybody's name on them, everyone's character's name, so that the GM could use them as a visual representation of when everybody's turn happened for initiative order. Another player would actually have a journal and would journal everything that the players were doing. Basically, so he's like writing it out like a campaign journal. And I thought that was cool. And a mapper. We had a mapper. Those are cool things. That's a way players can show their investment in the game, and you know, you don't have to do those things, but at the very least, if you show up, you know, just show up to game, show up on time, be ready. You know, real basic, real simple.
Yarp.
Yarp.
Shall we wrap there so you can get a drink and I can get a drink and.
Yeah. So let's wrap this up. So thank you all, everyone, for hanging out with us today and enjoying our look at the 44 rules. And we hope you have a really great rest of your week. And what can I say?
Yeah.
Dungeon on, I guess.
Well, it's our safe for work tabletopless game tonight. So yeah, no boobies. If you're anti-boobies for whatever reason, you can watch us play a game using the Cypher system tonight. So
yep. Well, I'll probably get to watch a little bit of it until it's our time to do Tuesday with Geeks. But
yes.
In any event, enjoy.
Look, the Dungeons and Dragons ride!